Alright, so hear me out. You might be familiar with the story of Plato's man. The philosopher, in a bit of humor, defined a human simply as one featherless biped. Well, rival philosopher and cynic who lived in a pot Diogenes saw an opportunity and jumped into action, relieving a chicken of its plumage before marching into Plato's academy and proclaiming said bird as, accordingly, a man, all to the discomfort of one unfortunate fowl. Although it somewhat depends on what you consider winning. In the end, Diogenes was victorious, as this is, by most metrics and according to most people, a poor way of defining pretty much anything. Taxonomy and wider biology have long surpassed this and many other crude classifications. Now we have binomial nomenclature and big trees to express why we are categorically different from blue jays and kiwi, or to help define what truly is and is not a crab. However, for the purposes of casual discussion as well as having any space in the head for uh, names of other people, taxonomical intricacies tend to get ironed out. Milvus migrans and
Parabudio unicinctus.
can both just be hawk, or if you've got a scratch to simplify, just bird works. And magic types work by a similar axis, meeting somewhere between what seems cool on the card and where distinguishing carp and manta is impractical. Flavor and function. Lines are drawn where certain creatures are similar enough. The horseshoe crab is not technically a crab, but good luck selling that to a judge. Zendikar and Innistrad vampires work differently, as do those Aetherborn vampires of Kaladesh, and yet Cordial Vampire does not care. He's just happy to have you, and frankly, good enough for him, good enough for us. And so by modern standards, we would consider
Antrostomus vociferus.
and Gallus Gallus really just as bird, 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 but it has three legs, human, cat, lizard, slith, volver, camerid, you get it. There are, however, some broader exceptions on this matter. A handful of creatures lack these non-class descriptors altogether. Arcanist, Nameless One, and Nameless Race are so to keep some mystique about them, although, for the life of me, I could not tell you why the few other creatures without such a type, Adakar Sentinel and Soldevi Sentry, are like they are, but good for them. The other exceptions make up a more significant portion. These are the ambiguous, the construct, the beast, and yes, we're moments away from being there, the horror. Referred to internally as fallback creature types, these catch-all exceptions serve to cover a wide swath of creatures for which individual typing is impractical. Cronch, Wumpus, Boggle, Doll, and Book are among those caught in this umbrella. Construct is the typing of any mechanical creature that doesn't better mesh with another classification. As for beast, it is the catch-all for the abnormal, animal-like creatures. Animaloids? Is is that a word? That occasionally overlaps with other types to demonstrate an overly monstrous quality. Then finally, we get to horror. Designed to replace the presence of demons in-game as the satanic panic swept America, the titular and pretty f***ed-up replacement child was given a vague name that helped hold together the art of already commissioned demons, an effort supported by the looseness of early magic art direction. If you ask me what type of creature this 1994 depicts, I'd probably give you a different answer than demon, while I'd similarly assert 1995's Hell's Caretaker was probably not intended as a horror. Come 98, direction had solidified enough that any would-be demons seemed to have petered out. And thus comes the many weirdos christened horror, now unquestionably their own. In marches the twisted legs of the witch engine to its own drum. From Arcadia follows the Delrake with its embedded screaming faces and a select stampede of the plains mercenaries. Odyssey Block is the next of the heavy hitters. Be it the many-headed crawling and remarkably well-named Bloodcurdler, the rodent monstrosity that is the cursed monstrosity, prowling among the many nightmare-born horrors of the Cabal. Thus the type cemented is here to stay, but never amassing much more than niche admiration. The fallback types as a whole are not often seen in the best of light, and Magic designer Mark Rosewater is admittedly not a fan of them, arguing that they lack the inspiration that other, more specific typing provides. And while to an extent I agree, they are compromises made in favor of function. Beast and Construct, I certainly agree, are too obtuse for their own good, lacking comfortable inner cohesion. Compare Craterhoof Behemoth and Cosmic Larva. The typing doesn't serve a lot of real creative enrichment when it defines something so loosely. But, for the horror, this level of abstraction comes with benefits. Firstly, the name horror is the farthest from regular classification. Compare it to its fellow broad types. Asking someone to picture a real world beast or construct will likely conjure up an image of something not too off from that seen in cardboard. Horror, however, lacks the same counterpart. At the closest, it can refer to a bad or mischievous person, especially a child, which doesn't exactly fit the definition of these monsters. Though I will begrudgingly give a shout out to cloistered youth. Without a proper analog, the ground is set for the strange to form. In magic terms, they are defined simply by their nature of being horrifying, ascending past all other forms of classification, either because they defy any of the reasonable metrics that justify calling something a dog, or because other descriptors just cannot fit. For the creature typed simply horror, it does not matter what biological resemblance one has to a canine, nor the amount of heads it gloats. It is simply a horror. It is the little compromising mechanics being unable to define that which is on the cardboard. The game has no clue how to classify these weirdos, and that's what defines them. That's cool. I don't want to be undefinable, but I'm stuck with this dang creature type human minion. However, when focusing on creatures with additional types, the strengths of the horror start slipping. As harder definitions get applied to a monster, the options of just what a given ugly piece of work might be become clearer, and mystery dissipates. The horror is awoken after isolated centuries and Zendikar's rediscovered skyclaves, have both a solid expectation for where their horridness originates and are rather upfront about from where their evolution diverged. Sure, they're horrors, but invoke less the idea of a horrid unknown, and more that they're, well, a big cat or a hydra that look a little strange. Same can be said for the scabs of Innistrad, typed with horror, but utilized simply to differentiate them as a more monstrous type of zombie. Scabs are neat and somewhat scary even, but the inclusion of the typing here serves near no flavorful addition not already fully put on display by the art. Horror here is not provocative. It's not at its best when it's used to describe something having mange. The extreme for which horror is the most hollow are in the two tribes for which it is most often applied, Eldrazi and Phyrexian. Although the pieces depicting both types of monstrosities shake many a bone in their own rights, they're too defined, too tangible, too fictional. The Eldrazi are pitched as these unknowable forces from beyond reality. The Phyrexians this unstoppable and similarly eldritch creation. And the fandom page for the Eldrazi clocks in at roughly 6,000 words, 5,000 for both Phyrexians and Phyrexia, while, for reference, this script is roughly 2,000. In an instant, you can find a catalog of mechanical identity and dry prose summarizing years of detailed storytelling. When sitting down to play, I don't feel that Eternal Scourge is the tangible, existential threat that it's billed to be, nor that the thrumming bird is the spawn of the never-ending march of Phyrexia. Because, in part, at your fingertips is the encyclopedic history of these creatures, ornament playability, and we can find if Necropede in a bun counts as a hot dog. Too much is quite intimately known, and deprives these two supposedly terrifying groups of their fear. And also, well, They're cardboard with abilities clearly labeled on the tin. Reading the card espouses the extent of the horror, makes it mechanically fully known, and, well, yeah. Where it's on full display, there's not a whole lot of room for dread to creep on in. Horror here doesn't add to the unknown strangeness. So, what does the horror type do for them? Well, it lets you know that Drosshopper looks kinda spooky. Thanks for letting me know. But what is there to say about which engine? Well, we don't know. There is uncertainty in this monster where there is not in the chronicled past of the Phyrexians. There's nothing to find about sinuous vermin or the Delrake on scouring the magic wiki. What you see in your hand is all there is to go on. The type horror being its sole method of meaningful description. Where did an abyssal nocturnist creep in from? Well, we know that the Demir seem to use it, but besides that, the origins of this creature, best classified under the metric of horrifying, are hard to put down. Okay, so horrors in Ravnica are maybe sometimes made by the fears and nightmares of Ravnicans, but the actual text on the matter isn't super clear. There's a Rakdos horror said to emerge from Rixmadi on these merits, and sometimes maybe Demir conjures horrors, but actual depictions of that are lacking, and oh, the Magic Wiki says that they're often created? Man, I can't believe I didn't think of looking at that. Oh wait, I did, and it doesn't have any citations. So unlike you, straw man, I did my due diligence and went to the page's history. And when that edit was made, there was no new Ravnican fiction out, so if it did come from somewhere, who knows where, please get off my back. Huh! The lack of the known in the background of these one-off creatures provides to further strengthen the mystique around them. Horror is all to be said. Also, I actually told a bit of a fib. For the Delric at least, there's some more information about them. In this case, in an obscure book you've probably never heard of. Functionally titled The Delrake, the enclosed short story is about one slighted Raytrick making a deal with a nefarious wizard and being punished for not reading the fine print. And it's fine-ish. It largely reads like a somewhat generic 90s fantasy story that's legally distinct from D&D. The short time spent with the monster reveals it to be a combination of Raytrick and a Darelore and sent after those who cheated him. And it's fine. We even get some neat text about how those consumed by the monster keep living in the gnarled mass. But like, it's just fine. Knowing the medium quality story behind the Delric leaves me a lot less inspired by the creature than I was when it was just left to the imagination. The mechanics already indicate its devouring nature, so what does the story provide? The details behind its name? The horror here is on full display, and I feel less inspired because of it. What is great about Old Stick Fingers or Grimstrider or the Delrake? Well, it's that unknown, that unspeakable. A horror it be, the only way to quantify these things. Though, if one wanted to be a little cheeky on the subject, I suppose you could try to argue them ultimately similar enough to a human if you're an ardent acolyte of certain out of chic philosophers.